get. So I'm happy to introduce to everybody Bobby Larson. Bobby is an education consultant with Holmes Murphy, and Holmes Murphy is our insurance provider for Delta Sigma Pi. And we worked with Bobby and her team for many years. And she is here this evening to talk about the art of risk. So Bobby, I'm going to turn it to you. If people do have questions at any point in time, feel free to put those in the chat. I will help monitor those. And then Bobby will also offer time at the end for additional Q&A. So Bobby, it's all yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Shanda. It's nice to be back with you all again. I really enjoy spending time with this organization. As Shanda said, I'm the education consultant. I've been doing this at Holmes Murphy for 14 years. I have a background in higher education administration. I was a Greek advisor. I've served as on the National Council for my own sorority, and I just really enjoy being part of the fraternal community. So thank you for letting me spend time with you this evening. Holmes Murphy is a company that's been around since 1991. We are celebrating our 30th year in business now, and we've gone under different names. We keep getting bought out, but our little practice of 20-some people in Omaha, Nebraska serve exclusively the fraternal community. We have 49 NIC groups, all 9 of the Divine Nine, 10 PFA groups, 6 NPC groups. We provide insurance for about 80% of the fraternal market. Lots of properties, lots of local organizations, alumni associations. We've been doing this for a while, and I think we're pretty good at it. We really enjoy the work that we do and the team that we have. Our work is based around risk, and risk is inherent in everything that we do. Now, if you've driven a car lately, you may or may not have kept to the speed limit, right? And if not, you were taking a risk. Depending on how people drive in your city, you might be taking a risk even if you were obeying the speed limit. Risks are any actions that have the potential to result in negative consequences for others or ourselves. So what are some of those negative consequences of speeding? You could get a ticket, pay a fine. You could lose your license if you have previous violations. You could get into an accident, hurt yourself, hurt the passengers in your car, people in another car. The accident could cause your insurance rates to increase, or your insurance coverage could be canceled altogether. Without insurance, you couldn't drive your car. Without your car, you couldn't get to class or to work. Without getting to work, you wouldn't have the money to pay for anything. You get the idea. One small risk may have a domino effect that you might not anticipate at the time you choose to take that risk. Do we always decide to take risks? No. You don't always intentionally decide to speed or break the law. Probably you do sometimes, if you're running late or you're trying to figure out, I have to get to this place by this point in time. More often than not, though, you might just do it out of habit or because everyone around you is doing it and you're just going with the flow of traffic. That reality is probably fairly true of the chapters that we work with and many of the decisions they make as well. Many of the chapters' social events, new member activities, they're simply made out of habit or tradition. No intentional decision is being made to risk a new member's life with a particular activity, but unfortunately, many of the decisions they make do involve risk, do have unintended consequences, do cause a ripple or a domino effect. It's easy to think first of alcohol issues when the notion of risk management is raised, but risk exists in other areas other than chapter social events. And it doesn't just mean breaking the law or university national policy. Getting a low chapter GPA is a risk that could result in social probation or other punishments. Not having a designated spokesperson during a crisis has risks. What we're trying to explain is that risk is inherent in everything that we do, and there are big risks and little risks, which is one of the reasons we need insurance. Why do we need it? Well, a lot of colleges and universities demand it to be able to recognize student organizations. It's a way to perpetuate and protect the organization, a way to recruit and retain alumni involvement. A lot of alumni don't want to get involved if they think that the students' risks are going to affect them personally. It's a way to protect the undergraduate members, let us continue, but it's also the responsible thing to do. Protect our members and our guests. It's the backstop. It's what kicks in when everything else has failed. So Holmes Murphy has over 2,200 properties, all those organizations. What I want you to understand is that we are an insurance brokerage. We work for you, not the insurance company. The insurance doesn't come from us. We go out to insurance providers and find the best, most comprehensive, most well-priced coverage for your organization. Fraternal organizations represent a specialty risk market. Insurers compare them to bungee jumping companies, toxic waste disposal companies, and carnivals. And insurers want absolute exclusions. If someone is harmed as a result of negligence, they don't want to pay. Our policies are modified in a way that protects those who are acting in accordance with the values of the organization, the national board, chapter advisor, chapter president, but doesn't protect the perpetrators. If there are people who are violating the risk management policies of the organization or laws or policies of the community, they could find themselves without the protection of the fraternity's insurance. So what kind of insurance do you have? Really comes in 3 buckets: general liability coverage, directors and officers liability coverage, and member accident. I'm going to explain what each of those are in a minute. But first of all, let's talk about who is actually covered. The national organizations, directors, officers, staff members, appointed volunteers, while they're performing the services of their salaried or volunteer positions. Alumni corporations, board members, undergraduate chapters and colonies and members, active members, and candidates for membership. Who is not covered? Anyone falling outside the scope of the policy. So if you're doing something, if you're golfing with your fraternity brothers and you get hit with a golf ball or you harm someone with a golf ball, that's not going to be covered under the fraternity's insurance because that's beyond the scope of the policy. Also, a member whose illegal or intentional actions result in someone's injury, they're not going to be covered. Anyone involved in an activity that's excluded from the terms of the policy, and I'll talk about that in a minute, they are not covered. Members, parents, family members, college administration, they are not covered by the fraternity's insurance. Only the members in good standing. So general liability is the big ticket item. It's the one that gets the most press. It's the most costly part of your insurance. It protects against claims and lawsuits where a third party alleges bodily injury or property damage resulting from negligence. And our main liability claims tend to be slip and falls, hazing, auto accidents, alcohol abuse, sexual assault and battery. Now, I mentioned the exclusions. Your policy has exclusions that are listed in your risk management policy. So if your members violate the risk management policies by hazing someone, by assaulting someone, by sexually assaulting someone, by purchasing alcohol for a minor, those people can find themselves outside of the protection of the fraternity's insurance. In the cases of students, if they are found responsible for violating the policies and are removed from the protection of the insurance, oftentimes parents' homeowners insurance ends up paying. So those exclusions are important, and that's why your risk management policy is important. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well.
Hey, Bobby, a question
Yes.
came in. Illegal or intentional illegal or intentional includes hazing as we define it, I assume.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And it looks like another one just popped in. When saying violating risk management policy, is it Delta SIG's risk management policy or a general one?
In the case of, if it's a question of the Delta SIG insurance policy paying, it's the Delta SIG risk management policy. But that also includes laws, federal laws, state laws. So breaking the law in any way can also remove you from the protection of the fraternity's insurance policy. But when we're talking risk management policy, it would be Delta SIG's policy because it's Delta SIG's insurance that's being asked to respond. Does that make sense?
I think so. If any of the questioners have additional follow-up questions, feel free to add those to chat and we'll get to those. Thank you.
Please do. Okay, another coverage you have is directors and officers. And that protects the leaders of the organization as they are fulfilling their fiduciary duties, which sounds very highfalutin and complicated. What we see most often in the fraternal community is people who are complaining of being dismissed from jobs. For example, house directors, which isn't a situation in your organization. What we would probably see in terms of directors and officers exposures in your organization is members or potential members who are either being removed from membership or weren't offered membership and suing on behalf of their right to affiliate with Delta Sig. So in terms of directors and officers exposures, the biggest thing is to make sure you are following your policies, that there is not a gap between what your policies say you will do and how you hold people accountable and how you're actually carrying out your standards process. It's where that gap arises that you'll have directors and officers claims. And then the other coverage you have is MAP, which is actually a pretty cool thing. If you don't know about it, you should. It is an accident policy that covers your members 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It does not have to arise out of a fraternity event. If someone, for example, is at home on spring break and is playing basketball and breaks their ankle, if they're a member in good standing, they can file a MAP claim, and MAP will cover any outside expenses, physical therapy, co-pays, things like that. Again, it does not have to be a fraternity event. It can be. The member accident program can protect the larger organization from liability claims, because a lot of times if people are injured, they're really just seeking coverage for their medical expenses, and that's what this will do. If you ever have a student who has an injury and wants to file a MAP claim, just go to our website. There's a way to follow. There are people to contact, but it is a pretty cool program, and it's a definite benefit of membership in Delta Sigma Pi. So let's talk claims. Claims are what we're trying to prevent, right? Because claims mean that people are being injured. Claims mean that your insurance rates are going to go up. Claims are bad. I said earlier that these are the things that we see most frequently in claims. Now, these are all our fraternal organizations. These aren't professional organizations. I wasn't able to break it down like that. But when you look at the frequency of claims, how often we're seeing claims happen, assault and battery, sexual assault, hazing, fall from height, slip and fall, and auto accidents are the top ones that we see. When you look at the severity, which is the amount paid out, assault and battery is still up there, but hazing, auto accidents, falls from heights, and sexual assaults are also some of the big ones we see in terms of claim severity. And you may wonder what claims looked like during COVID. Interestingly enough, they looked very similar to what we had seen in non-COVID times. When we looked at the claims from August 1st, 2020 to June 14th, 2021, they were very similar in frequency to claims that we saw when students weren't necessarily on campus, weren't necessarily meeting. We've not seen a claim, a general liability claim filed for COVID at all. It's been the same old, same old. So I think early on in the pandemic, a lot of folks were thinking, okay, well, we won't have issues because they aren't living together, they aren't going to school, they aren't meeting in person, but they were still getting in trouble and we were still seeing claims. The number of claims in that period of time was very similar to the number of claims 2 years before. And what do we want to do? We want lower insurance premiums, right? We want those claims to go away. We don't want to have to pay out. And I will say that your organization is in a very good position, in part, I think, because you have very well-educated leaders and it carries down. And I thank you for being here today. But how can we prevent claims? How can we reduce risk? Well, in Holmes-Murphy land, we call it ART, A-R-T, avoid, reduce, and transfer. The avoid piece is the prevention piece, reduce is minimizing risk, and transfer is essentially the insurance policy or a third-party vendor contract where the risk goes elsewhere. When we talk about avoiding and the prevention piece, we really want your organizations to plan events carefully. We have a lot of tools, which I'll talk about in a little bit, to help that happen. But look at how alcohol is being served, how people are getting to the event, what security looks like, what the venue looks like. If it's not safe, cancel it. We really, we get a lot of really interesting asks about, should we have this event? Do we need special event insurance for this event? Things like riding mechanical bulls and slip and slides and philanthropies where you bring your own chainsaw to clear the brush for a city property. And in a lot of cases, those events aren't safe. We would like you to say no. So cancel it if it's really gonna be out there just to prevent things from happening, to prevent things from getting out of hand. Make sure that your members know your policy, the plan. Every time an event is planned, that risk management policy should be pulled out and discussed with the entire membership. Have trained event monitors and officers, and utilize appropriate themes that aren't sexist, racist, et cetera, et cetera. The reduce piece, minimizing risk, is where you've got an event, you have something that's happening, and you can tweak it. So you can change the location, change the timing, eliminate the source of the problem. If it's the time of day, if it's the people that you're inviting, if it's members who are problematic, don't let in people that don't need to be there. Have very specific guest lists. Make sure that you're not allowing folks that aren't invited into your event. Engage the adults to assist. This is where we really want the students to reach out to you folks to help them plan safe events, carry them out safely, know what their expectations are. Inviting the advisor to the event. Why not? That way they know that it's happening, that there are event monitors there, that security is the way it's supposed to be, that alcohol is being provided. Involving the adults is always a good idea from our insurance perspective. The chapters that are well advised are the ones that don't have problems. So the more engaged you can be, it will help minimize the risk. And then transferring it, that's where the risk goes elsewhere. Making sure that the contracts that you sign for venues are fair and equitable. Hosting the event at a third-party venue who's going to take charge of carding people and serving the alcohol and making sure that people aren't overserved. Having licensed and insured transportation and licensed and insured providers of alcohol.
Bobby,
yes.
Yes. I was going to say a few questions have come in. All right, take a sip. Does MAP supplement someone's personal insurance? In other words, if my insurance covers my costs, I wouldn't need to file a MAP claim?
If your insurance covers your costs, great. You should probably still file a MAP claim because it will pay all the out-of-pocket expenses. Your co-pays, if you need more physical therapy than is recommended under your personal healthcare insurance policy. It will also act as primary insurance if the person injured does not have insurance.
Excellent. Good information for sure. How much are appointed and elected leaders covered for? Back when you were talking about the coverages.
I don't know the details of your of the limits of your policy. Okay. I should have prefaced this by saying I'm not an insurance person. Brandon L., whose contact information I'll share at the end of this, is your client service consultant. I honestly do not know what your limits are. They're probably consistent with what most universities are requiring, which is $1 million, $2 million. But what I will say is that you as advisors, you as volunteer leaders are covered, and defense costs are not part of that limit. They are outside of the limit. So if attorneys have to be hired to defend you and your organization, that does not erode the limit of the settlement dollars at all. You should consider yourself to be very well protected by Delta Sigma Pi as a volunteer.
Excellent. And if those who had a question about that want more information, you could certainly reach out to the office. Either Jeremy Levine or Gina Tipton should be able to help you or make sure you get to the right place. Someone just made a cute comment about, did you make purple and gold slides just for us?
No. But what I will tell you is that purple is my favorite color. So I always like to hang out with you guys. And Holmes Murphy has the color palette, and so I always opt for the purple.
Very nice. Well, we appreciate it.
Yes.
Let's see here. Someone says, I once chaperoned my chapter's harbor cruise banquet. And someone just noted, good call, because boats and students sometimes are a thing. If the chapter invites an alumni who is not an appointed or elected officer to an event, is that individual covered under the MAP policy?
No.
Okay, and they kind of followed up, if that alumni is a chaperone appointed by the students, but that's, I can just say that's not an official role that we have. But that alumni is not a formal officer, so they are not covered.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that worked through the questions at the moment, but keep them, folks.
Yes. Great questions. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Okay, back to kind of this whole prevention piece. You are not alone. Your students are not alone. No one is out to get the students. We all want students to be safe and successful and have a wonderful fraternity experience, right? So we need to be conscious of what campus resources are available with the groups that you work with. What are the headquarters resources? What are the Holmes Murphy resources? And each other. How can you as a group who are fulfilling some of the same roles support one another and help each other and educate each other? So consider that you're not alone, and there's lots of folks that are willing to help and able to help. This is a partial list of external organizations that we promote, and I will share this list with Shanda later. But there's just some really good information out there that the professionals, we've been doing a lot of partnering with, for example, the American College Health Association and the JED Foundation on programming, because we are not experts at Holmes Murphy, but we've been reaching out to the experts and reaching out to folks who know what they're doing. And there's just a lot of really good stuff out there. So we'll share this after this presentation is over. One of the things I want to commend your organization for is that you folks have gone through the Dr. Lori Hart School of Policy Development. Lori and her work in the fraternal world came up with this frame that in order to change the culture in an organization, you have to step back from the policy. You have to understand that your philosophy has to come first, and that drives the policy development, which drives the procedures, the resources, the things that you share to fulfill the policy expectations. Then you educate people on that, and then you can do enforcement. And only with all of those people, all of those pieces in place, are you going to be able to drive culture change within your organization. That said, you have a really, really great policy. It's concise, it's clear, it's very specific for your organization. If you're not really familiar with that, I will challenge you to become familiar with it. It's the piece that, as Lori would say, you don't want to be deposed and have your policy say things that you aren't doing. You want there to be no gap. And your policy is so well done and so clear that that gap is limited. And so the first step is to know your policy, make sure that your students know the policy, make sure that your officers know the policy. And it's really a good one. Contracts is another piece. A well-executed contract can really work in your favor. A poorly executed one can really be a challenge. So we have some resources to help you with that. First of all, we would ask that it never be signed in the name of the national organization. It needs to be executed in the name of the chapter. You need to recommend that the undergraduate student execute it if it's the chapter that's planning the event. If you have questions about meeting the insurance requirements, or if the language confuses you, because we always talk about it needs to make sure that indemnification and hold harmless language is equitable, send it our way. We will take a look at it. We will make recommendations to you. Best that this can happen prior to the contract being signed, because once it's signed, we can't do anything. But I'll also point you to 2 resources on our website. We have online learning courses that in a number of different topics. Event planning. The event planning ones are things like how to host a BYOB event safely, what event monitors should look like, what constitutes an event. But we also have contract information on there where you can take a look. It pops out and it says, okay, this is what it needs to say here, and this is what it needs to say there. So I would recommend that you check those out. But if you have contract questions, pass them on to Holmes Murphy. We will take a look and give you advice on them. Another piece, making sure that you're holding members accountable. When we ask, should members be held accountable? Every hand in the room goes up, right? Yes, of course, members should be held accountable. But if we ask, do you have a well-trained standards board? We don't see as many hands. So we have a resource for that. On our website, again, we've created a code of conduct template that was vetted by an attorney that is very familiar with conduct processes. Along with that, we've developed a resource that has meaningful sanctions. How can you sanction your students so that they're going to come out of it learning something, still wanting to be connected with the organization. In addition to that resource, the written printed resource, we have an online course for the meaningful sanctions. When we just rolled out a standards board best practices, encourage you to check those out. If you don't have confidence that your standards board is well trained, is well able to handle things, we've got some resources out there for you. Some of the other things you can find on holmesmurphyfraternal.com. We just have a well-curated library with a lot of things on it. They're all free, they're all shareable. Everything from a very well drawn out event planning guide and concurrent resources to just things about contracts. If you're going to have a third-party vendor, just all kinds of good stuff. So I would recommend that you check it out. We also have an app. It's HM Event Planner. It's a free app. It's consistent with our event planning guide, has all the same questions. How is alcohol getting there? How are people getting to the event? What's security like? How did you build a guest list? Has the ability to PDF it and email it to a chapter advisor or a social chair, whomever needs it. So if your students aren't using it, I would recommend it. It's just a good free tool out there. We have a great prevention calendar that helps in prevention programming. Greek Talks is a cool thing on our website. It's 5 or 6 different Greek leaders talking about their specialties. If you need some chapter programming, they're 15-minute TED Talk-ish things, but focused on the fraternal community. Really good stuff, really good people. And the thing that I am focusing on in my messaging this year with students, with advisors, with whomever, if something happens, call 911. So many of the recent tragedies that we've seen in the fraternal community are because people are getting into trouble and no one's calling for help. Whether they're not conscious of the amnesty policies in their organization or if they're afraid they're going to get in trouble, we just need people to call 911 more frequently. We would have fewer kids die if that was the case. And if we could get that culture change that you call 911 when someone is in trouble, I think it would make a difference. Know your crisis management plan. Again, Delta Sigma Pi has a really good one. Make sure you know who you're calling. Who needs to be informed in case of an emergency? Who needs to be designated the spokesperson? In your organization's case, I believe it's the executive director. So should something happen, obviously you need to let the headquarters know and be very conscious of the steps that need to be taken in case of a crisis. Know those steps before something should happen. Be aware of that. So if you get a panic call from a student at some point in time, you can take charge and share with them what needs to be done. So we've got, a year that we're all starting out really hopeful, really wanting everybody to be back to normal, have a great fraternal experience, have a great collegiate experience. And that may or may not be the case. With the Delta variant, things are changing every day. This was a great article in the Washington Post about how students can minimize their COVID risk. I think there's 3 things that we're trying to convey in terms of this COVID fall. It's going to be different everywhere, from campus to campus, from state to state, from community to community. You aren't going to be able to have a blanket policy that applies to everyone. You're going to have to really pay attention to what the campus is saying, what the local health department is saying. We're just strongly recommending that organizations tell their members to follow the experts in their area and be consistent with what's going on there. The second thing is control what you can control. There's a lot of things, mask mandates or proof of vaccination or things that are not really in our wheelhouse. Control what you can control. When we looked at the claims, they were the same issues: alcohol, hazing, sexual assault. Those are the things where I think we can make a difference, where our prevention efforts can make a difference. So control what you can control. The question we're seeing a lot is, how are we going to set up our environments for safety, and what does that look like? And that's what the students are asking. So be deliberate about what that looks like in your community. Is it safe to have events inside? Do you need to have masks? Do you need to have events outside? What kinds of social distancing policies are possible at your events. What does that look like? Think it through and be conscious of what's going on within your local community, because that's the most important place to pay attention to right now. So what can a leader do? Well, they can provide guidance, advice, and share their experience, share their knowledge. There's no way to eliminate risk, but you can manage it better by knowing the policies and procedures of the fraternity and the university, working closely with the students, working closely with your leadership. Ask them questions. Don't wait for them to ask. Participate in all the training you can get your hands on, which obviously you're doing tonight. Thank you for being part of this. The fraternity's insurance will protect you if you're acting in a way consistent with the values of Delta Sigma Pi. And I always recommend doing the right thing, even if it's a hard thing, even if it's a difficult thing. That question has come up a lot with COVID. How do we guide our students? How do we tell them to behave? And I think, we just tell them to be safe, to follow the constraints of their communities, support them in doing that. If you do the right thing, even if you end up in a deposition or in a witness stand, I think that that's the argument you say. I did the right thing. I tried to keep students safe. So are there questions?
Oh, there are. Take a sip and I'll start reading. So someone first and foremost just wanted to clarify what MAP covers or who it covers. They are suggesting it covers elected and appointed officers and our collegiate members, but not general alumni.
That is my understanding.
Okay, and that is mine as well. So
okay, good.
Okay, yeah, and unless I missed a memo, things happen. I'm not gonna lie, but yes. So hopefully that helps there. The contract review you mentioned a bit ago, what is the normal turnaround for a review of a contract?
That is a really good question. And a lot of it depends on how swamped our folks are. We really ask 30 days at least, if that's possible.
Okay. Knowing that students are sending it to you probably 17 minutes before it's due to the property.
Perhaps, yes.
Exactly.
And we will do our best.
I will mention, I review contracts also many times for chapters. So if you're working with a chapter on an outside venue of an event, if it appears to be a very straightforward contract that, doesn't seem to have a lot of legal language, I can review, and certainly if something gets bigger than beyond my knowledge or comfort level, then we can always work with Holmes Murphy or other resources to help.
Awesome. Thank you, Shanda.
Yeah, and I tell people, for me, plan on at least 2 weeks. I'll review it as quick as I can, and you might get it back the next day, but with, so many different things to juggle. So we can work together on that, but do encourage your chapters, and if there's not time to get it to us, have them have their chapter advisor review it. Somebody that maybe has more experience in some of those spaces. Would you suggest that as well, Bobby?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That would be, yes.
Okay. Moving down here. Looks like nope, that was my response to someone. Are there any graphics or visual content you have seen organizations use for risk education aside from this awesome presentation?
I will tell you, my own organization, Alpha Chi Omega, has partnered with Zeta to Alpha, Pi Kappa Phi, and Sigma Nu, I believe. It's 4 organizations, and they've done some really cool campaigns about alcohol, knowing your pour, taking that red Solo cup and breaking down what that means. Some other really cool visual stuff. And the easiest place that I found to find it, even though I'm an Alpha Chi Omega, is the Zeta to Alpha site. But there's some really good stuff out there. And I would check out their campaigns. Really, really good stuff. Sigma Nu, and I'm not sure if they're doing it this year, they've also, during National Hazing Prevention Week, they do 40 questions, and it's all about hazing, and it's dispelling hazing myths. It's on Twitter. And if they're doing that again, That's coming up in the next week or so. That's really a fascinating conversation. So 40 questions, Sigma Nu.
Great. So Sigma Nu and Zeta Tau Alpha would be two sites to go check out and see if you can find these items she mentioned. What other questions? Does anyone have other questions or need a follow-up from anything that I've been reading from the chat? I will mention that here in a couple of weeks on October 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, we are doing another risk management session, and it will be actually presented by Dr. Lori Hart, who Bobby mentioned earlier, and our insurance, somebody from Holmes Murphy will also be there to answer questions.
It'll be Brandon.
Brandon.
His contact information is up on the screen right now. Brandon is your client service consultant.
Perfect.
And he's the guy that you would go to with an additional insured request or any questions about, like, if you really, really, really want to know what the limits are that I didn't know, contact Brandon. He would very much be able to help you with that.
Excellent. And that session, you all are welcome to attend again. It's going to have hopefully the same answers and information, but it will be presented very differently. So feel free to attend, encourage others to attend, collegiate, alumni, anybody. Just another tool to help arm people with more information about risk management and how to help manage that. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in.
If folks think of anything later, please do not hesitate to shoot me an email. I am happy to engage in a conversation. It's what I like best, is working with our clients. So make my day and shoot me an email or give me a call. I just want to thank you all for the time and energy you're giving your organization. Your commitment is the reason that my job is easy coming in to talk to you folks, because you don't have claims. You have a really positive culture in your organization, and I appreciate that very much. But I did want to make sure that I thanked you and Shanda for all that you do for your organization.
Well, thank you. And you're getting many kudos in the chat as we speak. So, well, I think with that, folks, I think we can call this session a wrap. Again, feel free to join again for the October 5th session, or encourage your DDs or others you're working with and your chapter officers at least to participate. So thank you again so much, Bobby. Thank you. We appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you again so soon.
Yes, hopefully in person next time.
Yes, I hope. It's getting closer.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Have a great night.